Welcome to Ouch, I'm a Soul, a podcast to keep us spiritually strong by contact with the Bhakti literatures. I'm Cyril Warrer, also known as Chandra, your host, and today we're starting a series called Praying in Bhakti. We're going to look at the famous prayers in the Bhagavad-Purana, also known as the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is considered to be the crème de la crème, the cream of the Vedic literatures. And so, since we all, well, not all, and I guess that's a problem in this world, reminds me of Jewish, hardcore Jewish missionaries who sometimes go out on the street and they ask you, are you Jewish? And if you say no, they just leave you alone. That's a whole other discussion. But if you say yes, then they get on your case like, hey, you're not Jewish enough. You're not practicing enough. You're not praying enough. You're not going to synagogue enough. And the fate of the world depends on us, the Jews. And therefore, there's problems in the world today because, we're not doing what we're supposed to do as the caretakers of the human race and so on. So back to the Srimad Bhagavatam, many of us, understand that praying to God, praying to the absolute truth is important. And so I have in front of me a list of the prayers that you find in the Srimad Bhagavatam, in this famous Bhagavad-Purana. Prayers by Vyasadeva, prayers by Arjuna, prayers by Queen Kunti, by Bhishma, by the ladies of Hastinapur, by Shukadeva Goswami, by the great sage Kardama, by his wife Devahuti, by Dhruva, by Prithu. There's all these beautiful prayers. So we're going to do this series. We're basically going to go through all these prayers. And today we're going to start with Srimad Bhagavatam 1.1.1, the very first verse of the Bhagavad-Purana, which is a very long verse and which has a very long purport or commentary. We're going to read, by the way, the translations and occasionally the purports or the commentaries by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, affectionately called Srila Prabhupada, who I'm proud to say is my spiritual grandfather. And he translated this Bhagavatam in the 70s. There are other translations out there, but I feel really comfortable with this one. This one is the most widely read in the world by far. So let's dive into it. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. It's the Invocation Mantra we always chant. And so this is it. I'm going to read you the translation and then, break it down a little bit. So, O my Lord Śrī Kṛṣṇa, Son of Vasudeva, O all-pervading Personality of Godhead, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. I meditate upon Lord Śrī Kṛṣṇa because he is the absolute truth and the primeval cause of all causes of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universes. He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations, and he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him. It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahma, the original living being. By him, even the great sages and gods are placed into illusion, as one is bewildered by the illusory representations of water seen in fire or land seen on water. Only because of him do the material universes, temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes of nature, appear factual, although they are unreal. I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Śrī Kṛṣṇa, who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode, which is forever free from the illusory representations of the material world. I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth. You could probably spend like days and days and weeks speaking on this verse because it's just so dense, right? So let's dive into it. Let's break it down. O my Lord Śrī Kṛṣṇa, son of Vasudeva. So right from the get-go, there's this establishment that Lord Krishna is God. or he's the Supreme Lord. Oh, my Lord, right? Shri in Sanskrit, as you may know, means dear, beautiful. So dear or beautiful Lord, dear Śrī Kṛṣṇa, son of Vasudeva. So, I mean, Christ is considered to be the Son of God, right? So the idea of, and Christ is also considered to be God himself, right? The famous Trinity. So in some way, the idea of God being also the son of somebody else is not so foreign, to a Western mind. In this case, the idea is this. First of all, you have God being a person, a supreme person, a spiritual person. We'll get into his form, which is different from our forms. His, inside and outside being non-different from each other. There's no question of God having a spiritual inside and a material outside like we do. We are, almas con carne, as we say. But God, in this case, in this conception of the Bhagavad-Purana, is a person, but is a fully spiritual person, an eternal person with an eternal spiritual form, and so on. So that Supreme Lord, Śrī Kṛṣṇa, the Bhagavad-Purana tells us later on in the 10th canto, appears in this world, appeared on this planet approximately 5,000 years ago. And the person, the souls, the individual soul who takes up the role, or the role literally almost in the sense of a drama on a stage, the soul who takes up the role, because ontologically God cannot literally have a father, right? If God is, as we'll see here, if we ever get to the second line, the cause of all causes, then he is the original father. There's no one beyond or before him. So the idea that the absolute truth, the cause of all causes, may have a cause that generates him is contradictory. So how can he be the son of someone called Vasudeva? Well, the Bhagavad tells us in the 10th canto that a particular very special soul called Vasudeva played the role, literally, of Krishna's father. And so when God appears in this world, as he says in the Bhagavad Gita, right? Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata adbhutanam adharmasya dadatmanam srijam yaham. I appear again and again whenever, dharma rises and so on. So when the Lord comes down, and this is the beautiful idea of the avatar theory, which other traditions don't really have, or maybe they have, but just once, you have Christ who comes and that's it. Whereas in the Vedic literatures, you have this idea of God continually coming down into his own material creation to help us out, but not just once. He does it again and again and again, and sometimes he appears in different forms, according to his own, sweet will, as we say. So when he appears on earth 5,000 years ago, as the text tells us, he appears as the son of a, quote unquote, the son of Vasudeva, a soul who's very intimate, very close to God, and who God chooses to have as his own father, quote unquote. I'm going to plug in my computer here. Excuse me, I had to plug in my computer. So God chooses a particular soul to play the role of his quote unquote father when that Supreme Lord enters and comes down into the material world. So that's why this verse here talks about son, Krishna being the son of Vasudeva. Oh, all-pervading personality of Godhead. The term personality of Godhead is a term that Srila Prabhupada coined, Some people say it's a little confusing. The point is that it's really pointing to a person, to a supreme person. And so he chose that term, personality of Godhead. So, all-pervading personality of Godhead. So here's the introduction of the concept of omniscience, of God being all-pervading. He's everywhere. Omnipresent. He's omniscient as well, but he's omnipresent. All-pervading. So here, as we'll see in the Bhagavad-Purana, Krishna is everywhere. He's in his own abode. He's in his own Goloka Vrindavan planet in the spiritual world, enjoying eternal, wonderful pastimes with his eternally liberated associates, liberated souls that we wish we could once again become. But he's also in every atom of his own creation, and therefore he's all-pervading. I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. we should respect God, and we should offer our, give thanks and praises. We offer our respects, our praises, our bows to him. I meditate upon Lord Śrī Kṛṣṇa because he is the absolute truth. So here's this idea that God, that Krishna is God. He's the absolute truth and the primeval cause of all causes, of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universes. Here we can think of Krishna's own statement in the 10th chapter of the Bhagavad-Gita, where he says, Aham sarvasya prabhavo matak sarvam pravartate iti matva pajanti mam buddha bhava samandita. Especially that first line, Aham sarvasya prabhavo matak sarvam pravartate. I am the source of all spiritual and material worlds. Everything emanates from me. So here the Bhagavad-Purana says the same thing. This prayer, by the way, is written by Vyasadeva, by the narrator of the Bhagavatam. And so he establishes that Krishna is the primeval cause of everything. So there's no other cause, as we said at the beginning. There's no other cause to Krishna than he himself. He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations. So how is he indirectly conscious? How is he directly and how is he indirectly? Well, being all-powerful, God is directly conscious of everything, right? Of every single movement of every conscious living being in existence. And, he knows when there's a leaf that falls from a tree, and he knows when a light turns red in, Timbuktu. And I mean, that's what it means to be, omniscient and conscious of everything. Indirectly, because there's this idea in the Bhagavad-Purana philosophy that even though Krishna is omniscient, omnipresent, he and therefore able to be directly conscious of everything. And in one way, he certainly is. But simultaneously or in parallel, he's also just, as we say in French, il a d'autres choses à faire. Il a d'autres choses à foutre. That's kind of a vulgar way to say it. Il a d'autres choses à faire. Il a d'autres chats à fouetter. That's even worse. Well, not worse, but he's got other cats to whip. I mean, what a horrible analogy. But the meaning is that he's got other things to do. He's got other things more important or more pleasant, more pleasurable to do than to supervise the mechanics and the dynamics of the material world that he creates. And mind you, the world that he creates is a world that he creates for the rebellious souls who reject him, who don't want to be with him, and who therefore are, kindly invited to transfer themselves to, or are transferred by force, literally, into this samsara cycle of reincarnation in the material world. But God has his own abode, the Bhagavad-Purana tells us, where he hangs out with his, liberated souls who really want to be with him and have fun with him. And so in that sense, he kind of delegates the responsibilities of, the creation and the destruction and everything, just basically the universal management, to other souls who kind of have that service, like Brahma. He's mentioned here later on here, right? It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahma. So Brahma, as we know, is the demiurge of the universe who creates all the planetary systems and so on. So in that sense, even though Krishna or God knows what Brahma's doing, he kind of like delegates the job to him, and I guess spends more of his time, even though he's unlimited, and more of his focus, again, although his focus is unlimited and omniscient and everything, with his intimate associates, with whom he dances and plays the flute for, and herds spiritual cows with, and plays in the river Yamuna with, and caresses, and so on, right? He is independent. That's a really important word, swarat. In the Sanskrit, you'll see this word, swarat, independent, fully independent, right? Fully. Itaras chartush abigat swarat, fully independent. And that's, again, that brings us back to this point that God doesn't have any cause, nothing causes him. He is the, as I think Bhaktisiddhanta, Prabhupada's guru, would say, the transcendental autocrat, right? He's the transcendental autocrat, totally independent. nobody in existence is independent except for God, right? He is independent because there is no other cause beyond him. It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge into the heart of Brahmājī, the original living being. So here we've got a reference to, Krishna in the heart of all beings, and in the heart of the first created being in the universe, giving him, Vedic knowledge from within. And hence we have these beautiful prayers, by Lord Brahma, the Brahma Samhita. By him, or by Krishna, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion. So why would God place somebody in illusion? Why would God, bar or hamper or block our vision of him or our relationship with him? In reciprocation. That's the answer. In reciprocation with our desire. Just like 2 days ago, I was having a cafe at a cafe at the demigods cafe in Saint-Germain in Paris. It's a famous cafe because that's where what's his name, Jean-Paul Sartre, and his I dare say evil wife. With all, we love her, we see her as a soul, but she definitely did some nasty stuff. Simone de Beauvoir, she was very much. Anyway, he also, both of them were, maybe great thinkers or whatever, but they definitely helped the cause of atheism and abortion and legalized abortion and all that, and with this whole existentialism. And so anyway, he used to hang out there. So I was having this discussion with an evangelical Christian lady, actually, a lady called Liberty, a really nice lady, and we're kind of comparing, her faith and mine, and discussing it. And so I made reference to this Bhagavad Gita verse that I want to quote you here in reference to why would God put great sages and demigods into illusion. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, really, it's a really important verse, a very, very important statement, Ye yata mam prabhadyante tam sataiva bhajamyaham. As one surrenders, as one takes shelter of me, I reward him or her accordingly. In other words, God respects our free will. God respects our free will, and God reciprocates with our desires. He reciprocates with us and our desire. So if we want to forget God, then God's like, okay, fine, I'll put you into illusion. That's the idea. I'll place you into illusion. Why? Because you want to forget me. So you want to forget me? So hey, somewhere else also in the 15th chapter, verse 15, Krishna says, from me comes knowledge, from me comes, remembrance, and from me comes forgetfulness too. So the idea is that, we cannot forget God unless God facilitates our forgetting him by reciprocating with our desire to forget him. That's beautiful when you think about it. So some demigods, some great sages, have their moments of weakness or their moment of envy, or however you want to describe it. And therefore, Krishna's like, okay, I'll place you in illusion. I'll make, I'll facilitate your forgetting me, right? So if great sages who are, very purified, and great demigods, or, devas as they're called, or gods and goddesses, I don't like to use the word demigod. Prabhupada used this word demigod because demigod means half God, half man, right? But technically when we're talking about the equivalent word devas, which refers to, higher beings who live in higher planetary systems above planet Earth, still within the material cosmos, they're not demigods. They're literally gods. They're gods with a small g, or goddesses with a small g, and they're certainly not God with a capital G, Krishna, the Supreme Lord. But they're not demigods. They're fully gods and goddesses. Some are more powerful than others. Some are, live on higher even planets than others, and therefore have more powers, more beauty, more longevity, and so on. But they're still gods and goddesses. But anyway, Prabhupada used this word demigods. So by him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion. We fall into Maya, into illusion, because we want to, or because Krishna reciprocates with our desire. Our hearts are very much influenced by lust and by greed and by anger and envy, and and all that boils down to our, desire to ignore him, to live as an independent enjoyer, right? And so Krishna, or God, being kind, reciprocates. All right, you want to forget me? Here, I reciprocate with you, and go ahead, forget me, right? And this brings us to the issue of, how could souls leave the kingdom of God? Some people say, some Vaishnavas say the soul never was in an intimate relationship with God in the kingdom of God. I reject that idea, because it's kind of similar. It's almost the same. It's almost the same principle. Like, why would a great sage, right, or a god be placed into illusion? Right? A great sage is placed into illusion because that great sage actually has a moment, or has some latent desire to reject God. And so therefore God reciprocates. It's not that, there's some great sage out there who's totally pure and who just doesn't want, or doesn't have a moment where he uses his free will to reject God, or to doubt God, or to want to be independent from him. Never, ever, ever, ever. And yet, in spite of never, ever, 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 ever using his free will to reject God or to turn away from him, somehow God puts him into illusion. That can't make sense, because that destroys the very verse. It destroys the principle of just or kind reciprocity, but reciprocity nonetheless from God in regards, or in relationship with the living entity's free will. So the onus is on the living entity. It's not that, all of a sudden there's Maya and, the living entity didn't want it, or, no, the living entity wants to be independent from God. God reciprocates, places that soul into illusion, or under illusion. So by him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion, as one is bewildered by the illusory representations of water seen in fire, or land seen on water. So here, the narrator, Vyasadeva, is describing to us what is the nature of that illusion. What is the nature of that illusion? It's Maya literally means, and I'm not a Sanskrit scholar. I wish I was. I tried to learn Sanskrit 3 times in my life, like academically, and I just was not able to. I'm not saying this to show off. I'm just making the contrast about how hard Sanskrit is and how hard it is to learn a language actually later on in life. But, from birth, basically, I'm fluent in Spanish, fluent in French, and, quasi-fluent in English, French, and Spanish. And yet, so that, you could say I'm pretty gifted with languages, relatively. But Sanskrit is just really rough. And I will not know Sanskrit in this lifetime. Fortunately, you don't need to know Sanskrit to go back to the kingdom of God, to get liberated from the cycle of birth and death, to reawaken your dormant love for God. External material qualifications are totally irrelevant when it comes to devotion, which is the only ingredient, Bhakti, to have Krishna, accept you back into his kingdom, starting with his own service down here on earth. But the point is, Maya, I know a few words, and Maya literally means not this. Maya, not this. So when you see, what does the Bhagavatam, what does Vyasadeva say here? When you see water in fire, it's not that. It is not fire. It's not water. It's fire, but you think you're seeing water because that's an illusion. It's not that. It's not water. It's fire. Or similarly, when you see land on water, like a mirage, right? Or water in land. Land seen on water, or vice versa, right? That water is a. You could also use the analogy of land seen on water as a mirror, as a reflection. When you or a tree seen in water. It's just not. It's not that. It's not what you see. So similarly, Maya is that. Maya is not what you see. The belief, for example, that we can be happy by gratifying our material senses, right? By having unlimited sex, and by eating unlimited food, including meat, by taking unlimited drugs, by making unlimited amounts of money, by accumulating unlimited amounts of power and control over others. If we believe, and I'm definitely speaking for myself here, if we believe that these things or these activities will, for example, give us happiness, deep, satisfying happiness, that's Maya. It is not this. That's Maya. All right. I want to thank you for hearing. We'll go on continuing. We've done about 2/3 of this verse, and we'll continue next time because, as I said, it's so dense. So thank you very much for being part of this first installment of this Praying in Bhakti series, and this second, I think, episode of Ouch, I'm a Soul podcast. And let us stay strong spiritually by always remaining in contact with transcendental sound vibration. Thanks again. Talk to you next time.
Krishna Kirtana Gana Tana Pano Premamritam Manidhi